Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Fireside Chat. This is Fireside Chat 30, 31. Like, Jesus. Wow. So, so today, if you are new to these Fireside Chats, basically the idea is that we get together just a few minutes before we start recording. We pick a topic. So, and then a topic that we are keen to discuss, but all of our conversations are very informal. Our thoughts are not very well structured. It's more like a conversation about a topic that, so just to share our ideas as we used to do in the old days where we used to go to the office and see each other in person, right? So, and,
Beautiful
and
segue.
Exactly.
you saw what I did there, right? So basically, today's episode is all about remote work and basically, are we going back to the office, right? So in the old days, we used to have these kind of conversations that you are watching right now in person, right? Having a drink, sometimes going to a restaurant, sometimes in the office, and now everything has changed. So, but before we start, as always, like if you are enjoying those chats, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up button. So, okay, so question that we get all the time. It's been 2 years now, right? So 2 years that we realized that all of us would be working from home, right? So everything was very uncertain, and it was a shock in the system, I guess, right? So for most of us, so are we ever going to go back to the office? And how? I think that a good. This is a question we get all the time. Are we going back? But before, maybe it's worth starting. Like, how did we adapt to this change? I would love to hear it from you guys. Like, how was it for you to adapt with the new norm?
So I have to say we didn't have a lot of problems, or I think we didn't have a lot of problems adapting because the job that we do doesn't necessarily need you to be in a in the same physical location to be able to do it. Right? Like if you're writing code, you can do that on your own. It's it can be better if you're collaborating with people, etc., etc. But it's not necessarily uh, you don't necessarily need to be at a physical specific location, no, like I don't know, like a clerk or someone in a restaurant or something like that, right? It's a bit less constrained in that sense. It also helps that we were already doing a lot of remote stuff, even if it was not everything, right? Like we were working with clients outside of Spain, outside of the UK, etc. So that was already part of how we were doing things. So a lot of the kinks of the problems with facilitating sessions remotely, etc. Although it was not massively used, it was something that we had experience with, and we had tools, and we had different ways of solving it, tried out. No, so it was more about making sure that everyone would be able to do it, wherever they were working from. And to some extent, it did put a bit more of a focus, no, on certain areas that normally happen when you're in the office, like communication, right? So increasing, or let's say being more purposeful, no, around what you're communicating, and giving transparency and so on and so forth. And that is something that has been evolving through all this time, right? Because when you move to remote work, or completely distributed or whatever, the bandwidth that you have face to face in the office is a lot bigger than what you have normally, right? And that's, I guess, the biggest difference, or the biggest challenge that I've seen from when we've been adapting. No? So I don't know. Well, how do you see it, Mesh?
Well, yeah, I'd agree with you. I think we were kind of set up to work remotely, at least from a tools perspective.
Yeah.
People, mileage varies when we talk about some people had space at home to create an office, others didn't. Some people were working from ironing boards and kitchen tables and all sorts of things, right? So there was an element to that. But if we look at purely from a tooling perspective, we were already set up for that. We were working remotely. Often it was not unheard of for people to work from home here and there. uh, as a company, we were actually quite clear that most of the time we would be working from the office, or we would be working from our clients' places, because we felt that it allows us to create better relationships with our clients and with our teams. And that's how we were. But moving to that, I think one of the biggest changing from a company perspective was that we decided to buy Miro licenses rather than just use it ad hoc. Right. So I think and initially there was, of course, people were worried about the pandemic and everything else, but there was a element of excitement from working from home. Like myself and Sandra, we didn't spend a lot of time at home. We were either traveling or going to work and so on. And after a long time, you got to stay at home, which was in a way quite enjoyable, nice. And that was, we were just coming into the first summer, and that summer in the UK was quite nice as well. So going out in the back, and if you have a garden or something, and having your lunch in the garden, initially it was actually quite pleasant. But I do remember at the time I was working from home alone, and I do remember at some point getting kind of very, the novelty wore off, and I was not happy. Like, you were kind of, you get up, get into your uh, work kind of mode, and then finish, but you're still in the same place. And so I think initially it was nice, and then it got to the point where I said, okay, when is it gonna end? And then slowly realizing that actually, answering your question, are we ever going back to it? Probably will never end. So this is the new norm, as it were. But yeah, I think it's been okay. I think we've gained a few things and lost quite a few things as well with the remote working. I personally think that working remotely as the sole thing is not enough for what we do. And I think there is a lot we gain through personal interactions. But going back to the way we were, where we were 100% kind of by default working from the offices, is also was, now that I look back on it, was seemed like almost a stupid thing to do. So yeah, i I am kind of I don't think we should carry on as we are, like 100% remote, but also I think we should really rethink how we working, and what our relationship with the office.
Yeah, for me, there is the business aspect that you both already covered. Like, so it was not very traumatic for us. It was natural because, like, yeah, we don't have a single server in our company, right? So everyone has laptops, and there's no single physical machinery. Everything. So for us to adapt, and as you both mentioned, like, we have clients abroad, and so it's not a big deal. But personally, is where I found it very strange, because mainly for me, like, I was coming from 2019. I had more than 50 flights that year, right? So I would barely stay like 2 weeks in a row in the UK. So that was not a common thing for me. So coming from not only going to the office, but also going abroad, and doing all those things, I actually, like, at the beginning of 2020, besides all the panic with the pandemic in terms of the business, the instability, like, so, but in terms of working from home, I was like, how am I going to do my job now? Because a big chunk of my job was to fly and see customers, see clients in person, run those trainings, run those discoveries and stuff. And although we bought some of the Miro licenses, most of the work that we used to do was very effective doing in person, and adapting that to do that remotely. Because, like, quite often when we bring, like, mainly beginning of the project or the early days of a project where there is a lot of alignment, you need to talk to a lot of people from our company, from our clients, and bringing everyone together in an online meeting. It is challenging. So for me, like I was quite worried at the beginning. And so like, can we do our jobs efficiently? I'm not talking about the normal day to day of delivering software, delivering features and stuff, but these
Yeah, you're
more
talking more about the
workshops. Yeah,
consulting
exactly.
workshops, that kind of stuff. You
Because
know,
because you relied, sorry, Jose, because like in those days, we always relied a lot on the personal connections. And it's not only about running the workshop remotely, but it's actually meeting our clients, our people for the first time, and creating that initial bond that would that would help us to have better conversations online later on, right? And that was for me like a big shock. But on a personal side, as Mesh was saying, like for me it was really strange to be at home because it was not a thing. Uh, but then of course I got used to it, and I like the way it is now. But there was also before you go, Jose, but like just one thing that I wanted to bring up. I don't know how it was for both of you, but like adapting even at home. Like for example, I've been married for a long time, but like being in the same house for all this time together, everyone constrained and stuff. Like a lot of people, including myself, had to adapt on a personal level as well, right, with family and everything else.
you know, I was going to say that because you brought up the pandemic, and at the beginning of the pandemic, there was all of this confinement and so on, and that was definitely not great. But I also don't think that represents, when you think of a fully remote work, that kind of stuff. Is not that, right? Like you're not gonna be locked in one place, only working and sleeping and no working. And so
Yeah.
that definitely wasn't a typical situation. I think that actually um, mentally, strain and drain people a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because you were not getting your social interactions from work, or let's say you were getting them through a screen at work,
Yeah.
yeah. But then there was nothing to compensate that, and that's not usually what happens. Number no, like, if you have a remote work, you work, you have your conference, but then you can go out, you have a beer with your friends, you have like
Go to a
there's a social,
restaurant. Yeah.
there's all of this social
Sure.
interaction that you're getting that is not work, you that is actually helping you in that sense. And I feel like that's one of the things that definitely had an impact on people. I have to say, I kind of enjoyed it because I'm not a very sociable person. So for me, when the whole confinement started, like not a lot changed, right? In fact, I would say, I was playing D&D more. I was, like I was doing all these things, although remotely, but I was doing it, no, and I feel like that's a big difference, between what people experienced at the beginning of 2020, and what it is turning now into, right? Because
Hmm.
now that you can go out and it is definitely different than what it was before. I don't know. What do you think?
There is another. Yeah, I mean, there is another point to our jobs that is a bit different to normal. Is that we are all three of us are in leadership position, and I felt that a lot of our work was, going to the office, sitting with this person, just ad hoc kind of serendipity, talking to this person, having a chat, seeing this thing, someone kind of seeing you and kind of bringing you into a meeting room and discussing something that they're going through, or they want a second opinion. And I felt that that was a very good element of our leadership that actually is missing now, because we have to make a meeting for everything, and often people are reluctant to create those meetings. But even when we have those meetings, it's not the same kind of energy. And like going back, we went back last week, um, and it's different. I mean, I didn't spend as much time on my chair and talking to a lot of people, and it was, you felt that you were you were performing your role a bit better. You were leading, you were seen, you were, accessible, and other people were accessible to you a bit more. There was definitely an element there that I thought, okay, you know what, although it's not very tangible, it's a very significant part that is missing from our day-to-day work.
Yeah, there is like one thing that I heard a few times, not only inside our company but also outside, that work became just work. So because like before it was a social, as you were saying, there was a social aspect in there. You would meet your colleagues, but you would go out for a drink once a week or whatever. Uh, and so there were far more opportunities, and you could speak to more people in the same day as you were going to the kitchen, having a coffee and stuff like that. So, and you have a bigger bond with those people. And of course, there was the work as well. But now, once that was removed, and for you to have a social interaction with someone, you actually need to book a meeting. And normally, like after that meeting, at least one person has another meeting right after, so you cannot just keep the conversation going and stuff, unless it will record at this kind of time, right? So when we finished our day and now we are having a chat and we have a drink and stuff, but we cannot do that with everyone anymore. But when you are in the office, you could do bits and bobs with everyone in the same day. You can talk to a 5 minute chit chat with quite a lot of people, right? So I heard these arguments quite a few times in terms of work became more work, and this is true. I have absolutely no idea how to replace, and even all the different attempts with donuts and all the different social aspect, but you do that through the screen. They help, but they are not a substitute,
It's not the
right?
same thing. It's not the
Exactly.
same thing, is it?
But on the other hand, when you ask people, okay, so you are all missing that, but would you like, okay, so how much do you really miss that? So would it justify you to be back 5 days a week in the office? Or not so much? So I think that I'm so yeah, I miss that, no doubt. But how much do I miss? Do I miss
But
like
all,
to do that every day, once a week,
but
right?
there is another element there, Sandro, is that our
Mm.
lives have adopted to staying at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, but before our lives were adopted to working at the office. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now the thing is that a pandemic forced us to come to work because there was no other option. We stayed at home because there was no other option.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing that's forcing us to go back, right? Which basically means that even I personally think that even when you ask people, they might be missing, but their lives have adopted in a different way now, and actually, it would be quite painful for people to go back. They would have to rearrange things quite considerably to go back. Even a couple of days a week, I think.
Yeah, because there are many factors like childcare, for example. So we changed how we do childcare at home, right? So now that because we stay more at home, so we didn't need the same arrangements that we had when we could not stay at home. Uh, but also there is the distance as well, because for example, if I was closer to the office, right? If I was like on a 20-minute commute, 15-minute commute, I would certainly be in the office far more often, right? So just and maybe sometimes go to a half a day, so I mean, or go to the end of the day, or so. But like a lot of people, well, mainly like living in big cities, like we have to commute. Maybe most of us for more than an hour. So there is a cost element to it. There is a time element to it. There is a quality of life as well because you end up eating out and all this kind of stuff. And so there is a lot of elements that when I balance everything, for example, I think that we are better off today. But I think that there is like the two extremes, never going to the office or going every day. I think that they are both bad the way that I see today. I just still don't know. I'm still trying to figure out personally what would be the in between that would satisfy me.
You mentioned distance and stuff, and whether we like it or not, we're all at the same distance now.
Mm.
If you know what I mean, like it doesn't
Hmm.
matter where you are. Like it may be a different time zone or whatever, but it's just a click away, and we're
Hmm.
seeing each other. No, uh, And I feel like that has been a major factor, for instance, in bringing the company together, etc. Now, the minute that you start making part of that presential, yeah, like people go to the office, like for instance, no, you guys are going on Wednesdays just to, but there's again the social factor of, you're at the office, let's go grab a beer, let's go, no, do things. And I'm like, shit, I would like to like I would like to do that as well, right?
Mhm.
Or if you're at the office and you still want to make people included, then you need to, even though you're at the office, you need to use the tools of remote, right? Like you need to still do the calls, etc. So then, um, if you don't, because if you don't do that, then it starts breaking down. No, it starts being two separate worlds again: the people who are remote and the people who are at the office, right? And I feel like that's a challenge that we still haven't solved completely. I feel like, again, if we go to the office, or we're deciding to get together to get that social aspect or whatever, we would still need to work the same way as if we were working remotely,
And
if
the
we
office
really
is not
want
geared
to.
for it.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
office is not geared for
It's also
people to
not
have lots of
prepared. It's not,
remote meetings. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, so that's something that I feel, if you're talking about ideals of how that would look like, no, for it to work. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, you mentioned time and, spending time at home, family, etc. My day to day is a lot more effective, I would say. Like I can cram a lot more stuff in, uh, than when I was at the office. Yeah. I don't know if that's good. To be honest, I don't know if that's good, right? But I notice it. Like for instance, if I go to the office, I almost don't have any time to do anything, because it's like meeting after meeting. So the day that I'm at the office, I kind of need to be aware of that, so that I don't have, I can have some breathing room between those meetings, and I can still do things while I'm there, right? And that's another thing that I feel changed completely, from going to the office to actually working remotely. You can be a lot more effective with your time, precisely because you don't have maybe so many distractions, if you want to call it something. No.
But see, like this is something that I don't go to the office very often. I think Mesh goes to the office more often than I do. But when I go, I made a conscious decision that I will block my day, because like one thing that I certainly don't want to do is go to the office and spend my whole day in the office in a video call, because then for me that it defeats the purpose. Because if it's to go be in video calls one after another while I'm in the office, I would rather do that from home. So then what I'm doing there, I'm blocking the day. Like for example, I'm gonna go for the full day every 2 weeks. I block my afternoon. So afternoon, unless there is a client meeting, unless something that I really cannot move, I will not have video calls that day. And then I take that time to work with, to see people, do some work, and but to socialize, to benefit from being in the office and talking to people.
Yeah.
But I
I try.
feel there's,
I
yeah,
try to
no
block my
doubt.
calendar to some level. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't happen for the whole day, but I do try. And you're right. Like I was actually finding that I'd have a meeting, but I'd get chatting to somebody, or someone would pull me into a meeting and so on, and I'd forget about the other meeting, right? And sometimes I would miss the meeting. And it's good to block that time, to give that time to the people that you're seeing in person, because that's now the bulk of our time is remote, and anyone can set up a meeting in your calendar and speak to you, and that's fine in a remote way. But when you're in the office, it's best to talk to the people, right? That's why you're there. So
Yeah,
you're right. If you that's not what you're gonna do, then what's the point?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So the I I also feel I don't think I've ever been so productive in my entire life. That is true. Like in terms of working from home, the remote work makes you very diligent, very organized, and you work far more. So this idea that okay, those hours that I was commuting, I would take those hours and go to the gym. That never happened, right? So, so those hours that I was not commuting is just like doing more work. But I think that even if I was not doing the work, but even in the normal working hours, even without counting those hours, if people are able to use them in a different way, the working hours themselves are way more productive than they were before. There are far less
Yeah.
distractions. You lose the human connection a bit because, and when you are going from one video call to another, you need to be okay. This is the meeting to talk about this. This is the thing to talk about that. This is the gap that I have, and I need to work on all those things during this gap because I have another meeting later on.
Yeah.
It allows it to be more organized. So in a way, I like the mix that it is today, and I like it. This balance should be more like to stay more at home than more in the office. If I had to choose my way, that's where I would be.
I think if I had to choose my way, I would work from the office a couple of days a week. Um, I I I think I work more hours. I don't necessarily know if I am more productive. Uh, Personally, I mean I have, yeah, as you said, you work more hours. You got this thing to do. There's not so many distractions. You got this thing to do, but I find that some things take much longer, especially interactions. So, like, to get an idea across, to have a meeting, to reach a conclusion, to all those kind of things, they it's and this single kind of bandwidth conversations that happen in those meetings, all those things, I find them actually much more time consuming, and often annoying, because the conversation aren't happening in a good way. You can't just get up, you can't use your body language. There's a lot of stuff that gets missed in these interactions. And as you said, you can't have those informal discussions. You can't have those two people are talking and just passing a quick message on to that person who's kind of there's so much missing in those interactions. So I don't know, like, I think when you're doing just kind of clerical stuff, or
Mhm.
writing something, or reviewing some document, or that kind of thing, I think it's definitely very much more productive. But 80% of our time is in meetings, and this isn't probably not the best mechanism for them.
Yeah, I was thinking like because like before, like when we are all in the office, what happened regularly is like maybe like someone would come to us and say, "Hey, just have a question on this. Like, what about this, and that?" And then you give an answer, and that's done,
Mhm.
right? So nowadays they would need to book a meeting for half an hour,
Yeah.
right? So they
Or
would need to
not.
book a
Eh,
slot.
okay, so or not, because here this is the thing. Like, uh, I mean, if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you," or whatever, or like, I try to make it so that I have the time to talk to the person, even if I have to, hey, delay something or whatever, and try to get that conversation in. And this is something that I am very deliberate about, right? Like, if you ask people in the team, like, "Hey, what's up?" No, just tell me what it is, and let me prioritize what you want to do versus no the interruption or whatever, right? But some things need to be discussed in the moment because it creates delays or whatever, right? Like that they need to. So that flexibility, I do. I won't say that I plan for it as in allocate time or whatever, but I am definitely very aware, very you know yeah, just perceptive of those messages that are coming in. Like, for instance, I almost never remove completely, like, the shut down the notifications or whatever, right? I know that may interrupt me when I'm doing something, but it may be something important as well, right? So I deliberately try not to build that easy to build wall of not communicating with people at all, and I feel like that's something that I'm very
Well,
clear about as well.
yeah, no, totally, yeah. But not everyone does that. Not everyone feels like they can interrupt you. But I also have there is a other thing. So, for example, there's a few people in our team that actually often need conversation with us, right? And I know like at least one of them feels quite reluctant to put lots of meetings in our diary. So what she'll do is she'll put 2 or 3 paragraphs really setting the context and everything, and sending that out to like the rest of the team. Like, I can tell you the review meeting, that the question that Anne-Marie raised yesterday, right? How many people read it in the team? Not many. Well, I can tell because there were no responses to it, and they required a response. On the other hand, if they were like, just pop in and say, oh, it's about this, and I want to kind of just quickly talk about this particular thing, and this is the area that I need your input on, it's much more efficient, because in there, even I couldn't decipher exactly where and which parts were input, but because it was a long-winded thing, I thought, okay, I'm doing other things, I'm gonna leave that, because I couldn't directly say, oh, not sure what you mean, what, like, there was not a quick feedback cycle I couldn't have a conversation there. And this often happens where messages, although you read them, they get left there, and often no one comes back to them, especially in team situations, in team channels.
Because this became like a new skill for all of us. When you are a non-native speaker, it's even worse. But it's not only about the language. It's like, for example, the written communication. It was a struggle because, like, it's exactly what you said, Mesh. And I'm not talking about the extreme cases where you write in a way that might be interpreted as rude or anything. No, I'm not talking about exactly this scenario that you said. Someone sent a message, but you don't know exactly how urgent that thing is or important is. You don't know if that person is blocked or not. So there is a skill in actually, when you are going to a channel where there are more people, and even in a one-to-one, for us to understand the entire context. That would be far different if you were just sitting on a desk and then someone just came, hey, I just have a question about this. I need this information for this and that. You have a proper conversation, and then in 5 minutes that thing is answered, and you can move on. But yeah, there is like, I certainly struggled, and I still question how effective I am when I'm writing messages, for example, because you don't want to schedule meetings all the time either, which means that you need to rely on the asynchronous communication. Normally we use Slack and stuff, but some people still send emails and stuff. But there is a skill in making the written communication effective, I guess.
And
Sorry.
Go on. Sorry, go on.
Like, we could talk a lot about the communication across cultures as well, and all that stuff. So like, there's a topic there that we should probably explore at some point, because it's interesting.
Actually, I've got one thing to ask you about, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, is that I get much more bored in meetings now than I used to. With the physical meetings, I get a lot less bored. In the remote meetings, I get way more bored. And like, a lot of the stuff is really important stuff and so on, but there is some dynamic in there. I think part of it is this single bandwidth. Part of it is just kind of, I don't know what it is, but I get very bored. And I find an hour-long meeting, which before it was about hour and a half before I start getting really bored. But now even an hour-long meeting gets boring after the first half hour. I don't know if you find that you're getting more bored or less bored.
I have shorter meetings. I can tell you
I think
that,
maybe
yeah.
I need to start doing that. Or imposing that.
But I think that this is another point, because like, we end up, an hour is allocated by default, or an hour or half an hour, and
Not
even
necessarily. You can configure it so that if you pick an hour, it will pick 50 minutes. I think it
50,
is,
yeah,
or whatever, right? So yeah, this is why I
or
have smaller
25
meetings.
for
Yeah,
half an
exactly.
hour. Yeah, so
Yeah.
but yeah, not like, when I see that technique as well, that people end up making 50 minutes, so you have 10 minutes between meetings and stuff, but normally they tend to overrun and do the full
Yeah,
hour.
they often overrun anyway. And they
Yeah,
kind of treat it
so
as if it's my hour, it's not.
exactly, it's still like, okay, this is the bit that we overrun, and that's okay. But I think that we also have far more meetings as well, because every interaction becomes a meeting,
Yeah.
right? And then not always you need that full meeting. And before, like when we had physical interactions, you could afford to have less structured communication. For example, you could afford to go to someone with not with thoughts that are not very well structured, and then you structure them as we have a chat, and that can be done in 5-10 minutes. But we are still going to meetings, like we need to block some time. We don't know how much, so we block an hour, and then, or if even if we think that is a 5-10 minutes, we end up blocking half an hour, and we still go with unstructured thoughts. So those meetings become even more painful, and by the end of the day, you are tired because you went from one to another. And I think that, and there is an art in also entertaining people during the meeting, right? So if you want in presence, no,
You mean the art of filters?
no, I think that, for example, even if you are in a meeting, like in a physical meeting, right? Some people speak in different ways. Some people are a bit more monotone, or they struggle, they take too long, or whatever. But this is easier to tolerate in an in-person meeting. But in a online meeting, the people are monotone or take too long to say certain things. It annoys you more, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't have other things. So there is something to say about that.
There is another thing, eye contact, right?
Mm.
Eye contact keeps your attention to that person, right? And you can't get eye contact. Often I find myself staring at the camera when I'm speaking, rather, because I've got 2-3 people there, they all occupy equal space. So you don't do that, that normally when you kind of look at people, look into their eyes, kind of, you don't do that. You just like, so because you're not doing that, so you're just looking straight into camera. And often I find myself thinking, I've just said everything and I'm saying it to that person, but I'm looking at the bloody camera and not at them. But if I look at them, they'll think that I'm not looking at them because now my eyes are away from the camera.
This becomes even more apparent when your camera is on top of one screen, but the people are in a different screen. So then you are looking at this side because you're looking at them, but your camera is here, right?
Yeah.
So talking to your ear.
Yeah, exactly. I find it weird, but yeah, it's all these things kind of relate to this diluted experience in interactions, in my view. And I think it's fine, as a uh but not always, as you said, extremes, right? You need to kind of re-engage with people, all these people that you're constantly speaking to. It's nice to re-engage with them at a personal level and not always be remote.
So for example, some companies now are pushing people to go back to the office. For example, my wife's my wife works for a company, and the company is pushing for them to be 2 days a week in the office. So what are your thoughts about companies that are pushing people to go back? How flexible should companies be? And also, like, this is valid for us. So like, what we are gonna do? Are we going back to the office, right? So from this conversation, apparently not. But like, but what would be the different strategies that company has? Like, what do you think about companies telling people, oh, you need to do this or that?
I can tell you what we've been thinking about, and most likely we will try it out. Yeah. So we're keeping the office, of course, and if someone wants to go to the office, they can. But now that we, for instance, are hiring people remotely or fully remote, no, we have people all over Spain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what about those people? Because they cannot just get a train or plane and come to Barcelona, work for a day,
Even
and then
outside
go back.
Spain as well, right? So there are people
Exactly.
outside
There's
Spain
people
that are
in
in the
in
Spanish
France,
payroll.
Portugal, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, exactly. So what do you do about those people, right? Because they might need to go to an office, whether it is to have meetings or because they need a space to focus because at home they have a baby or whatever, right? Like there are many contexts, no, in which having an office or having that space is, they may need the social interaction, no. um so what we are looking at is sort of like shared co-working spaces, right? So where you have almost like gym for less and this kind of stuff. No, like you pay and then you can go to any of the spaces, and the spaces are all across the country, in the UK or whatever, right? And you can book. I'm gonna be on Monday at this co-working space for X amount of time, and you go there, you're there, and then people can also see that. Now, oh, Mash is going to the office, so I may want to join and go to the office as well, and so on, right? So giving that flexibility of people having an office to go to, even though it's not like the company headquarters or the company office, no, is something that we are definitely doing. Then there is the getting together, right, for social things, and this is something that we are incentivizing as well, whether it is playing board games or Magic the Gathering or whatever it is that you are fond of, or going for beers, or doing a barbecue, whatever, that kind of let's meet socially is something that we're also uh, promoting in that sense. So again, from that perspective, the office is there. It's available for people that need it. It's not a forced thing, right? Like it's not like, oh, you need to fulfill this quota, right? Although legally, at least here in Spain, there is a lot of that, right? Like you need to be explicit in the work contract, et cetera, how those things are going to happen. Otherwise, you may be infringing the law, or you may be liable, no, so if something happens or whatever. But besides that, I feel like that flexibility is here, and we want to keep it as much as possible, right? Like we want people to be able to take their kid to uh you know to, to to school in the morning, right, and be with them or feed them or whatever, like that the whole family aspect where you can actually see your kids before they go to bed, no, that's something that we want people to have, no, and we want that for everyone, because a lot of the time when we talk about conciliation, no, or conciliación, we call it in Spanish, I don't know if that's the work-life balance kind of thing, no. We always think of parents, that kind of stuff, right? But what about the people who want to go and work from their hometown in the middle of the countryside? Why can they do that? Or they want to go see their parents, or they want to, that should also be an option. No, I feel like it definitely, we've gained a flexibility that we don't want to lose, because it just makes the work more enjoyable for people as well.
Yeah, I just want you just a quick one, Max, before you go, like just for people maybe watching this episode. Some people might be from Codurance, some people might be from outside Codurance. So like our company has offices in different countries, right? So, and of course the legislation and regulations are different in the UK and Spain and now in Portugal. But it's always important that the different countries or different offices, they have the freedom to try experiments, and some experiments, if successful, can be rolled out to the rest of the company, or they will be just more local because of whatever the employment laws,
or the customs, the local customs,
or the local customs and stuff. But this is also good for other people that work in companies that have offices in different locations, many different countries. So it's important for them to be aware of those experiments and things. Definitely. Sorry, Masha, you would say something else.
No, I was actually, there's a couple of things. One is that I personally don't like the idea of mandating, right? Because I think we should educate, and we should advise even, and create the right kind of space for people, like just like Jose was mentioning, create those spaces that is convenient. And even when we think that team communication needs to happen and teams need to gather to advise and help and educate and provide them with a space, but not just like blanket, everyone must be in the office 2 days a week from now on. I think that kind of defeats the object, really. We should create a culture where there is this hybrid situation, and it's convenient for people, is and people understand when to use that facility and when not to use it. uh, and I love the idea of what you just mentioned, Jose, as well. I was thinking about this, that it would be great to create these kind of almost like satellites where you can go. It shouldn't be just right next to everybody, but it should be kind of in central places where more people can gather. So, like for example, if I say to somebody, "Oh, I'm gonna be in the office next to my house. I live in northeast of London," right? It'd be much more difficult, for example, Sandro to go all the way through central London, who lives in southwest, to come to me. But somewhere more central, like for example, in our case, like east, which is Stratford, is easy to get to. It's got really good links, right? Having a satellite kind of facility there where people can gather. Similarly, in other areas, and having a central thing as well, where people can be a bit more central, but not have just one place to gather. I think is a brilliant idea, and allowing people that flexibility where they can come, and providing people with the advice and the education sometimes as well on what works and what doesn't work in remote and physical kind of situations as well.
One more thing is incentivizing people meeting each other, because for instance, we have people who go to Madrid. So why don't you work from the Madrid co-working space, and you get to see Manuel who's there, you get to see Maravesi and all these people. No, so
Yeah.
that's also part of that, because again, in growing as we're growing, middle of the pandemic, there's lots of people that we haven't met in person, but they're working with us in the company. So if you can take an opportunity to de-virtualize them, so to speak, no, and see them face to face, and have a beer and build that link that later on makes everything easier, right? Like it makes it easier to communicate, to just exchange information, or just deal with difficult situations as well, no?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so
No, go on.
no,
Sorry.
no, because this is something that you guys are also doing, right? Like people from Manchester going to the London
Yeah.
office, or they like there's all of this thing happening as well, no? That is
Yeah.
part of that. Mhm.
Yeah, we have a client where we have people from well, the London and people in the south, and then also people from Manchester and other parts of north, and then they try to gather to get together every now and again, and this is one of the things that I like. So I personally don't think that after 2 years working remotely, right, it sounds a bit silly to me that companies would force people to go to the office with a certain cadence, like they would impose this. So like, this is when people should be here or stuff. We've been doing that for almost 2 years now. So why change, right? So why force that? Because I my assumption here, like when I say this, is that we all survived as a business, and my assumption also here is that we are doing okay the way that we are going. So unless that there is a very specific problem that you are trying to solve, we should not be forcing people to go and pass a rule across the board. Everyone across all the departments, everyone in every project and stuff should be in the office every 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays or whatever that is, right? So I cannot see the point of it. Like I would need to understand what problem we are trying to solve with this kind of approach. So,
This
but
is
Mhm.
sorry, no,
No,
you're
I
gonna
would
say.
just say like, but I think that one thing that is very healthy is leave up to the groups of people. For example, we have departments, companies have departments like marketing department, sales department, or projects, right? So a group of people that are working for a specific project or in a specific team or whatever. I like the idea that they synchronize, but it's more up to them to decide how they're going to synchronize than to then the company to impose on them. But they, as a team, they could say, hey, what would work for us. And then if they want to go to the office, I like the idea of them going on the same day, but more as a suggestion, not an imposition from the company. So like if you're going to go to the office, instead of going one person each day and you need to be in a video call anyway, why don't you go on the same day, or at least like the majority of you on the same day, and then you have lunch together, or you finish the day a bit earlier, go and have a drink in a pub, like, see what I'm saying? Benefit from being together. But I think there should be more an agreement between groups of people than an imposition from the company.
This is something that also has come up, like, because before, so a big part of why we're able to do this today is that clients are more open to working remotely as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they were forced into that because of the circumstances, no? But now it's here and they know that it works, and they may have preferences, etc. But sometimes the question has come up of, hey, could you tell the guys to come to the office, right? Like, we want to start bringing people to the office, so could you guys come in? And in that sense, what we've done is we've had conversations with the client to understand the reason, and this is something that I also bring, when I'm talking to the teams, is like, they want us to be at the office. Okay, why? Is this a matter of I don't trust the work that you're doing, or what is this about? Like, what problem are they trying to solve by asking you to come to the office, right? And if we get to the root of that, then we can solve it. And maybe the solution is, hey, stop by the office. Maybe that may be a valid solution for it, right? But you need to understand what is happening there. And a lot of the times when we have the conversation with the client, with the team, and then there's some sort of consensus that everyone is comfortable with happens, right? Like, hey, I live outside Barcelona, I can only do this, like once a week. Let's coordinate. Let's do it once a week. We come, we see this, we're all together, we go, we have beers, etc., right? There are people who like that social interaction. Hey, I'm gonna come more often, right? Like, I'm gonna be here 3 days a week because I like it, and I feel comfortable doing this. That's fine, right? But it's not about forcing it on people, and it's definitely contractually is not there, right? Like, so contractually, there is not a clause on the service needs to be delivered, presentially or whatever, because again, that would not make sense, especially if you're hiring people remotely, no? So that conversation around, okay, so what is it that you're trying to solve, no, is a big part of that, no? And then once everyone understands, you can get to a solution for sure.
And I think that like most people now, like after those 2 years, people are valuing their personal lives a little bit more, right? So quality of life, and some people are moving away from the big cities. They are changing jobs to do other things and accommodating different lifestyles. And I think that this is actually a positive thing. It's a thing that, I'll be very honest to both of you, I didn't even imagine that. Like, if I go back to 2019 and remember the kind of life that I used to have, and so like I barely stayed at home. I barely saw my kids. Right, for me it was a shock. Again, I had to adapt. So like, it's almost like I always have a joke like that. At some point, my kids would be asking Viviane, my wife, was like, "Oh, is this the man that appears in some of the photos at home?" Right? So because I was barely home, right? Even I was in the UK, the amount of hours that I was out, and I'm still working long hours and stuff, but having that opportunity to have a break and open, like, take my kids to school, as you were saying, Jose. So mixing those things a bit more, for me is a very good benefit. Like, is a positive thing from the new norm. Yes, we lost a bit of the human contact. We lost a bit of the bonds that we create with our colleagues. The work became more about work than actually social activities. So there is a much a much clearer separation between the two. Before, when we were in the office, there was more of a mix of those two. But I think that if we can mitigate that with a few social interactions, like promoting those days that we all meet in person, one way or another, without just a blanket, like just a total imposition on everyone from the company, but let the people organize themselves and decide when they want to meet in smaller groups and not whole company. I think that this is quite healthy in a way. I think that we are in a better place now, and I feel also that the companies that are pushing people to go back to the offices, mainly companies that where people don't need to be there, that people that work with computers and things like that, I think that they are making a mistake. They're going to end up losing some of their key people if they do that.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I think I just killed the conversation.
Exactly. No.
And we are hiring, by the way.
Yes. So
another beautiful segue.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is another positive side effect of everything as well. That's of course more pushed by the pandemic and now the new norm, because in the past, even the growth strategy for a lot of companies, and that includes ourselves, they were very attached to geographical locations, right? So people would open offices in specific cities and it would target specific markets, and that the nowadays most companies became global overnight, right? So companies that were very local, doing very localized job and stuff, hiring people from their neighborhood and stuff, all of a sudden now they do global, and this is another positive side effect, because we can work with people today that we could not work in the past. If you go back to 2019, not only ourselves but quite a few other companies would not hire certain people if they were not close to one of the offices, right? So and this today,
Yeah, but then we can go now into no, because yes, the pandemic sort of pushed people to push companies to be more global. Yeah, and now you have access to, let's say, talent anywhere in the world, basically. But then the competition also became global.
sure.
So even though you may hire from anywhere, then probably you may not be competing at the same level as any of the fangs, no, or any of the, let's say, companies who have an advantage because of the size in that case, no. So that has also been an issue, and what you see is, yes, you're not constrained anymore by what you can find locally, but at the same time you are constrained by the competition, right? Like, if you really want to hire globally, you need to be competitive globally. And I'm not only talking about salaries, salary, that's one of the things, but you really need to be offering something that people want to be a part of. Yeah,
but that will open us to a completely different, well, a much bigger conversation, I guess, if we keep going
maybe
that
that's our
direction.
next fireside chat.
Yeah, exactly. We could talk about like business strategy in the new norm, not only like
And what
people working remotely.
how do you attract really good people?
Exactly. So there you go. Like, if people want to hear about that, or if you would be interested to know our thoughts about this topic, leave your comment, and we'll be happy to have an episode on that. Guys, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
Well, I can.
So, are we going back to the office, or are you going back to the office?
Once in a while.
I am.
I am once or twice a week.
So yeah, exactly.
Summer's coming.
How often?
Summer's coming. I need to kind of wash my bike and get on it and go to the office more often. I used to last summer, and then during winter, I think, and other things happened as well. But I'm gonna start going a bit more often. I think at least once a week.
Okay, what about you, Jose? How often are you planning to go back, or
I
what
don't
would
know
be
if
the
once
sort
a
of
week.
schedule? Yeah.
No, I don't know if once a week. But I think if people are going to the office, I definitely want to go to the office as well. Yeah, as in the social interaction aspect is what I'm more interested in. Um, so yeah. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to the office. I've already planned it, and yeah. So, but that's it. Like, it's not as a forced thing, and definitely not as a. It's more of a personal need than anything else, not required. So yeah. One thing that, and again, going back to bringing up questions
Right.
that hasn't.
You're gonna bring a brand new topic in the
No,
Come
last
no,
minute.
on.
Yeah.
but no, but talking about remote, like, did you guys read remote or any of these books on remote? No.
No.
I'm aware of the book, but no, I haven't read it.
Okay. Right. No, I just curious of how much impact do you think any literature on the topic has had on how have you approached it or whatever. But that's, yeah. Anyways,
Mood, since we haven't read it.
yeah,
But feel
exactly.
free to recommend some books, so we could probably pick them
Yeah,
up.
I think the only book that I've well, no, sorry, it's not the only book, but one of the first books that I read on this was the remote book, which is okay, but I read it like a really long time ago, even years before the pandemic. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to see if it still holds up a bit.
Cool. Yeah, and for me, like same, like I think that if I go back, like I'm shooting between once a week to once every 2 weeks. So on Wednesdays maybe, but like I still need to, again, those are things that now is not just go to the office. I need to synchronize at home. So this is why people need to make arrangements now, right? So after all this time working from
And
home,
also
but
synchronize with people at work as well, so you're not there on your own.
exactly, exactly. This is another thing. Like I'm not
That'll
gonna
be
be there.
really, really sad, no?
Yeah,
Like, you go to the office and then
you
you're
are
the
on your
only
own.
one.
Yeah, on your own on video calls the whole day because no one.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Right,
Yes.
cool. Okay, so thanks everyone. So if you enjoyed this chat, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Like, keep your put our thumbs up and write in the comments if there is any topic that you'd like us to discuss. Let us know. I see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.